Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming into another video. All right, so we got to talk about seeding with the Lakers if we were to make the playoffs, because that's what's on my mind, and I'm gonna do that. BDO44, welcome to my channel. All right, so look, this is a presumptuous video to make to begin with. Our team is in ninth place, having lost our last game, with a chance to go up against that same team tomorrow. Now, that same team just got shot down by the Clippers, so I don't know how they're gonna react to that. But I know that they walked out of there healthy, meaning that we're going to run into the same people that beat us a couple days ago, with Vucevic, who's now going to be on the floor and unhappy because he got kicked out of the last game. So that whole idea about us trying to take advantage of them being small, they're not really small. He just walked out of the game halfway through it. So we're going to have to deal with him for a full 48 minutes, along with Drummond coming in off the bench, which tells me that we're probably going to have some of the same problems we had in the last game. Unless Anthony Davis is somehow able to overcome all of that with the bigs that they are throwing at him and finally step into a real scoring role. Now, that's a fluid thing because we know our team can score from anywhere. Guys can attack from anywhere. And one thing about our squad is they learn. A guy like Austin Reeves is going to learn from what happened to him against Derrick Jones Jr. One thing that's underrated about what just happened to us against the Chicago Bulls, the fact that we hadn't seen that team at all. We did not know that team. They're an Eastern Conference team, and that was our first time seeing them, obviously, since we only see Eastern Conference teams twice. And this is a back-to-back with them, even though it's not a back-to-back for them, since they had the Clipper game in between that. Either way, that is what is going on. So, therefore, our team didn't know this team, dude. It wasn't like we had run with them a couple times, played in them preseason like we have with Sac and Golden State. Those teams, we know better. Certain team players on that team, you know not to do certain things with. Now, I would task most of our players to say that you should probably know all of your opponents, generally know how a guy's about to attack you, just because you just want to understand the league as a whole. I would imagine, since I have a general understanding, those guys on the floor literally know who they're running around with. So that's kind of what it is for me. I just want to see us match up and just kind of take guys' tendencies into consideration, even when they're in different conferences. So especially since there's so much turnover anyway, you should know each other by now. Depending on how long you've been in the league, of course. But here's the deal. I kind of want the Lakers to face the Denver Nuggets in the first round, man. And you know what that entails us doing? Being in 9th and 10th place and playing in the play-in tournament and ultimately earning our way into the second seeding of the play-in tournament. Now, nobody wants to be in that situation because that means you're fighting for your playoff life continually with the need to win. And those matchups that we could be running into with those particular teams, I don't know that we really fare well with them, depending on what they're going to be doing. A team like the New Orleans Pelicans, if we see them in the play-in tournament, I don't know that Zion will ultimately get cleared to play at all this season. But I'm telling you right now, if they're fighting for their playoff life and he has any kind of anything to give them, he's going to probably want to do that. He's going to want to. And so that's one situation I'm looking at and saying, yo, that team, if he plays, I don't like us in that game. I mean, we just don't match up well with them. I don't. So that's one thing I'm saying, like, yo, I would rather not kind of run into some of these teams for a one-game situation. Now, if we were to play them in a 7-game series, I feel a little different. I really do. I feel a lot different because I like our ability to overcome and strategize and maybe have certain things kind of fall into favor as the series progresses. But in a one-game situation where it's winner take all, I'm concerned about how any one game can go. You know what I mean? You could be in a position where you got everything lined up perfectly, good strategy, everybody's ready to play, everybody's playing well, and then boom, 2 rolled ankles and you're out of the game. You know, that can really happen in a one-game situation. So you don't want anything really riding on one game. But what I'm saying is that's the only way to the AFC. It's the only way to the AFC. Like, that's the only thing that the play-in tournament is kind of taken from you. You can't really strategize your way into your best matchup as well anymore. That's out of here. For some of these teams that want to be in like 2nd place and 3rd place and say, well, let's see if I want to try to aim to try to get away from a certain team who made a trade in the second half of the season and now they're better, that kind of thing. Let me try to position myself to be in the 4th spot so I can play Dallas as opposed, that kind of thing, for example. That's kind of gone now. Because now some of these teams at the bottom are in positions to kind of shuffle around a lot more, so you really can't position yourself properly. Not only that, but now they're battle tested even more so than they would have already been, having played playoff games that you weren't in that play-in tournament. So that gives them a bit of an edge and rhythm that I think may be taken away from the start of the first round. So that's kind of interesting to me when you consider it. But as I say, with old teams, you don't want to play in the play-in tournament. Something could go wrong in the play-in tournament. you can roll an ankle in the play-in tournament, and that kind of thing can mess up your whole playoff. So that's something the NBA has yet to experience, and I wonder if it will kill the play-in tournament if something like that were to happen. But I actually like it. I think it brings a lot to the game. And so far, so good, really. I just don't like the fact that my team has literally been a part of it every year. I'm tired of being in that. But nevertheless, it does make for compelling basketball. So, yeah. But nevertheless, given the fact that the circumstances are as they are, I'm looking at some of the teams that we would otherwise match up with in the first round if we were lucky to get into the playoffs. And to be honest with you, I don't really like most of those matchups at the top better than the Denver Nuggets. And a lot has been said about the Denver Nuggets and their issues. I think a lot of people see the Denver Nuggets the way I do. I don't think I'm alone. It's just interior defense is such an important thing. And having so much of what your offense is catered to surrounded by an offensive player like Jokic, who doesn't really defend, even though his defensive stats are pretty solid. I think he's a better defender than people think. But nevertheless, it's kind of difficult when you don't have that rim protection necessarily down there. So even if you're as good as they are, there's still going to be opportunities to score on the Denver Nuggets. So they're an anomaly to me, in a way, to consider that they've been able to rise to the top of the Western Conference all season. But I think a lot of it has to do with some of the incomplete teams that they've been able to beat. But I don't really know. Jokic is an elite talent, and so as you guys know, I don't play with his talent. I know exactly what it is, and I know what he can do. So, if he wants to flex and win games, he should be able to do a lot for his team no matter what. But at the end of the day, when you're in this league, there's just certain ways you want to be able to attack, and we talk about it so much. But trying to get easy buckets and things of that nature, and he's not a direct deterrent to that for that team. So because they've gotten rid of some of the players with length, you bring in a backup center like Bryant, who doubles down on that same thing. And I don't know that they use him very much. I just wonder, in a playoff series, if you have a neutralizing capable type of defensive big, like, obviously Jaren Jackson or Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, in theory, you should be able to neutralize him. And that would then trickle down to the team being somewhat crippled offensively, because everything he does is what gets them going. Now, that can be amended a little bit, especially with Murray now back in the fold. The fact that he's healthy and scoring 30 again and all that, he's just going to continue to elevate, and he can carry a team with his killer instinct. We've already seen his levels. He just hasn't been healthy since. But I ain't forgot what type of playoff performer he is. So if he does step into his very best, he can be the difference in the series by himself, and I'm letting everybody know that right now. If he's healthy and he's the Jamal Murray that he was when he was going up against Donovan Mitchell and breaking records and all that good stuff they were doing about 5 years ago, Denver could go much further than what I'm talking about. He's a difference maker. But at the end of the day, if I'm to assume he's just going to continue to have injury struggles and his conditioning isn't quite where it needs to be as of right now going into these playoffs, and I'm just going to assume he's not going to be that version of himself, and that also determines what I think of the Denver Nuggets. I do respect players like KCP, won a championship with him. We know what he can do. But at the end of the day, I just don't know that their team is as good as they look. I don't think they play as good as their record. And because of it, I want to see them in the first round as a Laker team. And I think doesn't really have great matchups in a lot of situations, but that looks like a better one for us than most. When I look at what just happened to us with the Chicago Bulls, the thing that concerns me is the fact that they have a team that I said simulates what I think the Clippers throw at you when Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are healthy, Terrence Mann and all those guys. They have wings that are pretty much their focal point guys, stars, all-star guys that are coming at you from those positions. That's something that we have trouble guarding. We can guard the rim with Anthony Davis. We got some perimeter capabilities with Schroeder and some of our guys, Vanderbilt, obviously, but we have only one Vanderbilt. Next, it's like Troy Brown and these guys. We don't want to use Max Christie, that kind of thing. So we don't really have the defensive wings to really throw at these guys unless we go into some, spaces in our roster that we just haven't ventured into. I personally think our roster is capable of guarding some of those guys if we want to turn to Max Christie, Devon Reed, Troy Brown, Vanderbilt a bit more. Those rotations that kind of remove our stars from the lineup will allow us to guard those players, but we don't know if we can score with them with those lineups on the floor. So it's kind of tricky when you consider those type of teams that are constructed that way. You don't really want to be attacked by a Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, players like that. The Lakers don't really want that. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Obviously, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, those 2-man wing 3-2-4 kind of guys that are coming at you, and then the bigs just kind of lay off. That's a different type of attack for the Lakers. They would rather not kind of come at them. So that's kind of how I'm looking at things. Unless we just start to use these players that I'm talking about and keep Anthony Davis on the floor with them, then we can really guard some of them dudes. The problem is you don't have Braun on the floor in a lot of those lineups, man. You don't have D'Angelo Russell probably in a lot of the lineups. You don't have Austin Reeves in some of those lineups. So it's just like you take some of our best offensive talent off of the floor when you give us our best chance to defend some of those best talented players. So that's what I've come to surmise as I think about this roster and try to figure out what combinations work for me. I just understand that we're just not as defensively gifted as we need to be unless we get away from some of the players that we really desperately would like not to get away from. And that doesn't mean that we're a better team for it. It just means that we can't defend anybody properly, in my eyes, unless we start experimenting a little more with those combinations during the game. So I don't think it's undoable. You just have to pick and choose when it makes sense to do it and make sure you keep one of those ball handlers on the floor. D'Lo, Braun, or Austin Reeves. If you can keep one of those 3 guys on the floor and have those 4 out there or some combination of that, I think you're fast enough and long enough to defend a lot of elite wings. I don't doubt it. I just know. I know what Max Christie can do. Also, we're not experimenting with this year. I know people are probably going to be looking around saying, I probably agree with you, BDF, but this is one of those situations where I say, yo, Scottie Pippen's son, Scottie Pippen Jr., should be probably a part of that attack as well. Given his defensive capabilities, ability to steal the ball, his fast feet, his dad's gift that he probably inherited himself to some degree, coupled with his ability to create plays for others and just score at volume. I just know what type of piece he is, and I know we're taking our time with him, and it's probably advised. But I'm telling you that's another piece that would make us significantly better as a team if we had him on our team and worked into the equation at this point. If we would have done that, like I said, we should have at the beginning of the season, by now, Max Christie, all those guys would have made us that much better. And I know we have problems getting guys in rotation and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if your team has holes in it, and those players in theory fill those holes, maybe some of the players you're using are players you don't need as much, then maybe you need them a little more. So these are the type of things I'm thinking about. I don't doubt that there are 2 wins that we can credit to Malik Beasley. So I'm one of those guys that understands that clearly as I assess how poorly he shot for the majority of the time he's been here. 2 wins, him. He just simply didn't win those games unless he went for 8 threes in both of them. The thing about it is, just like I said about Nick Batum going for 8 threes against Chicago, is that something we could really lean on? And is that something they should really lean on, rather? Is that they should play him like 30 minutes because he hit 8 threes in one game? And he's probably capable of doing it again, maybe 10 games from now if he keeps shooting like that. I mean, it's just not good. It's bad percentages. And not only that, but Nick Batum is not a liability by any stretch of the imagination. So you can keep him on the floor for all of that stuff that we would hope to have on the floor for us right now. So it's like Malik doesn't do that. Max does. You know what I'm saying? But we're sitting on Max like he's not somebody who can hit 8 threes someday. He can definitely hit 8 threes one day. And that's the funny thing about it. It's like, yo, Max Christie is a shooter. he's a shooter. That's the part that's gotten lost about all this. He wasn't able to shoot very well in college. But since he's been here, he's shot a very good percentage with most of the shots he's taken. And his mid-range is nice. So my thing is, look, I know what my youngsters can do. I understand that every young player has a development phase, and I think that underrate that aspect of the game to a degree. Because a lot of times you play young players and they drive you crazy, turn the ball over 10 times, off their foot, all kinds of stuff. We've seen the mistakes of Max made and others as well. But at the end of the day, I just understand athleticism. I understand length. I understand that a young player is going to pick up stuff quickly if he shows certain traits that show that he's intelligent. So I'm not worried about that. I just think that we need to invest in that ability to learn quickly and develop fast and see it manifest. And when you don't do that, you miss out. So that's really what it is. I think we're missing out on real rotations that can actually help us get stops against some of these players that we seem to be deficient against. As I sit here saying what we don't want to run into. We don't want to run into that stuff because people don't want to do these things with the roster. I would. And I would be finding ways to get the stops that I need. And look, you got to look at it like this. That unit is going against their first unit. Once you get those defensive players off the floor, subbing in your stars, they're going to run the score up. Because your stars in that situation will have been rested. We're talking about D'Angelo Russell, LeBron James, and potentially you know, maybe even Austin Reeves, all sitting while I'm talking about guarding DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. Okay, this is a situation where when Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan do whatever it is they do, being frustrated, not being able to get shots off, or going to the line constantly because they're going to be fouling them, unfortunately. You're going to see situations where LeBron James got rest, Anthony Davis got rest, Vanderbilt got rest. All these guys are getting healthier and continuing to be fresh for the whatever the future would hold, hopefully playoffs. But for me, it's like, yo, this is what you need to do, and it'll keep you fresh. This is what you need to do to guard the players in front of you, and it will keep you healthy. So this is something that's lining up perfectly if we do what I'm saying. You just got to get out of the mindset of we must play Bron. We must play Bron with this shooter. We must do, no, you ain't got to do none of that. You just got to look at what's down there, find the length and the speed to be able to guard those guys, and get out your feelings about all of that, because we're going to win together. And believe you me, if those rosters, forget all that. Golden State last year, this is what they had to do. That's it. Study Golden State in the finals. We talked about it at the beginning of the series. Steve Kerr was using all the old guys, and they were getting their butts whooped. Boston was getting into them. It wasn't a problem. Until they started using Wiggins, Gary Payton, Otto Porter. Y'all know what I'm talking about? And that's when they started really digging into the championship. And I know, and anybody who paid attention to them know, those were the guys who really got it home. Yes, Steph Curry won it, the MVP, and he deserved it because he was playing stellar. But it was those guys who were doing all the guarding of the players that they wouldn't otherwise have been able to guard if they would have continued trying to get Clay to guard those guys. It wasn't happening. They needed Otto. They needed Gary. They needed Wiggins. I'm telling you, we need to do the same thing. The same thing. Because it's not about what the mantra is. LeBron is our mantra. The Splash Brothers is the Golden State mantra. All of that was great. And they needed some of that. But that was not what leaned into winning. And they wanted a championship. I'm telling you, if we use what we have, we can lean into winning against some of these teams. But if we want to go with the mantra, Bron must be the leader. We got to take the last shot with Bron. He won't get a ring. He won't get a ring. But if we use this roster properly, we can. We can beat these damn teams. We can beat them. I'm telling you, this roster can beat these teams. I can see it in my head. We have the length. We just got to use it. We got the speed. We just got to use it. And it's on the defensive end. It turns to offense. That's how you do it. And you have the shooting to make that make sense. When you need a bucket, a three-point shot, you do have three-point shooters. When you need offensive scoring, you do have offensive scoring. But this is a defensive team. And if you get the stops that I think you're capable of, you can keep teams under 110 points. And that should get you what you want. Because everybody's trying to score 150. And as these playoffs continue, that's what you're aiming for, to keep people under 110 points. You know what I'm talking about. Play your Wenyen Gabriels. Play your Max Christies. Play your Troy Browns. Make sure these guys get enough playing time on the defensive end. It's defensive. And Anthony Davis is down there with them, obviously making it impossible for everybody else. That lineup cannot be stopped if they're doing what they're supposed to do. You can't get past them. You're not going to get past them. And so this is what I know, man. Watch Max Christie and little highlights of how fast he can go from side to side and how long his arms are. And tell me he won't disrupt somebody on a double team. On a double team. Leading them toward the basket of Anthony Davis and whoever else is down there. Wenyen Gabriel. You trying to drive? Cool. You got nice bit of defensive players riding you all the way like skin to an impossible shot blocker that you are not laying the ball up over. It's impossible. Going down the other end, we got Anthony Davis on the floor. So we should be able to score no matter what. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, look, if we know what we're doing, we'll ride our defensive team all the way to as far as it can go. As far as it can go. Our perimeter defense needs to get better if we actually want to be serious. But this is how you do that. This gives you the length to do that. Your Max Christie, Troy Brown, Vanderbilt, that gives you the length to do what it is that we suck at right now. We're not using it. That's what I'm telling you. This is how you do it. So, we're going to guard the perimeter, man. We're going to stop teams from hitting 20 out of 40 like the Bulls were not able to do against the Clippers. And if we're able to figure that out, there's not a whole lot this team can't do. It's not a whole lot we can't overcome. So that's what I'm here to say, man. I want us to try experimenting with things that make people be really humble. Bron showed us he's willing to come off the bench. Westbrook showed us before he was gone he was willing to come off the bench. We're going to need guys to sacrifice like crazy, just like that. in order for this team to get the most out of itself. If not, we can just go home in the first round or in the play-in tournament and pretend like we couldn't do anything about it. But anybody who watched this video would have known there was something to try. There was something to try if we don't try this. There was something to try. So that's what I want people to understand, man. We ain't never helpless. This team ain't helpless. Not with this roster, it ain't. We gonna look like we're helpless if we don't use it correctly. We're gonna look like we're helpless if we try to lean into stuff that doesn't work. But if this team is used properly, it can guard who it needs to guard. So that's what I'm here to say, man. It's not the easiest roster to use. But if you know what you're doing, it ain't that difficult roster to use. It's not like it was in the first half of the season. It's not like that. It might have some difficulties with the power forward position and the shooting guard position. But if you slot people into positions that they could play, like Rui and Braun at the 3, both of them, then it makes a lot more sense for you. Vanderbilt at the 3, all 3 of those 4s go to the 3 in different lineups that allow you to put other players like Rui on the floor more, or put guys like Austin on the floor at the 2, 1. You can do so many different things with this roster, which is why I want us to try to become more imaginative with it. Because the combinations that we can use do not render us to using LeBron James and Malik Beasley on the floor for no 30 minutes. That's not very imaginative at all when you consider the type of combinations this roster can give you. So, yeah, that's my thought, man. That's my thought. I don't want to overthink this stuff. I know there are a lot of aspects of basketball I don't understand. So if these combinations don't work, scratch it. But I don't see where they wouldn't. Not when you consider the type of length and the shooting ability of those players. And then the fact that Anthony Davis would be on the floor, I don't see why he wouldn't. So that's what I want to try, man. Give us the length. And I'll tell you right now, Malik Beasley wants to win. He wants to win. If he's on the floor causing us losing efforts and he doesn't make shots and he feels bad and the whole team's losing, guess what? That's not a better day for him than sitting down watching everybody else help him win. That's not a better day. Causing your team to lose versus sitting and being properly slotted on your roster to help your team win. There's 2 different experiences, man. 2 different experiences. And a lot of times, like I said a million times, sometimes we think we're doing the right things by giving people too much. Throw them out there. No, anything that you're putting somebody in that doesn't make them their best isn't going to make them their best. You got to put them in positions that make them successful. And so let's stop doing things that otherwise put people in positions to look worse and then sit back and say, well, I don't know what's going to do. They have to play harder. No, they don't have to play harder. We got to strategize smarter. And we got to be more imaginative about our strategies as it pertains to these rotations. And most importantly, specifically, how we use players in certain positions. So that's what I got to say, man. BDL 44. I thank you all for watching.